Virgo. Do you feel it? That particular weight in the air that has no obvious source. That low, persistent hum beneath the surface of your ordinary days that you keep noticing and keep dismissing because you cannot point to anything concrete enough to justify it. That sensation somewhere between awareness and intuition, somewhere between knowing and almost knowing that something is happening in a space you cannot directly observe. You have been feeling it. You may have been chalking it up to imagination, to wishful thinking, to the mind's tendency to manufacture meaning in the absence of information. But what if it wasn't imagination? What if what you have been feeling is simply accurate, the way certain instruments are sensitive enough to detect pressure changes that the human body cannot consciously register but responds to nonetheless, in the restlessness, in the inexplicable alertness, in the sense that the atmosphere has changed in ways not yet visible to the eye. There is someone who cannot put you down. And I mean that with a precision that I want you to sit inside for a moment before we go any further. Not someone who thinks about you occasionally, not someone who finds you pleasant to remember, someone for whom you have become without your permission, without your knowledge, possibly without their own full understanding of how it happened, the central preoccupation of their interior life. You live in their head the way music lives in the head, arriving uninvited, cycling through at unexpected moments, impossible to silence by an act of will alone. They have tried the act of will. It has not worked, and the failure of it has left them in the particular predicament of someone who set out to feel less and found themselves at the end of that effort feeling considerably more. In the ancient symbolic architecture of the soul's journey, what this person is experiencing carries the signature of a specific and almost mythological state, the state the old writers called possession by Eros, not possession in the dark sense, in the cosmological sense. Eros, in the oldest traditions, was not a small winged figure with a toy bow. He was a primordial force, one of the first things to exist. The force that draws disparate elements toward each other against all logic, against all resistance, against the careful self-protective structures that reason builds and emotion dismantles without effort. That force has found this person, has found them through you, and what they are currently navigating, this relentless, disruptive, oddly beautiful chaos of feeling that keeps returning to your name, your face, the specific and irreplaceable quality of your presence is not something they chose and is not something they can simply unchoose. They are stressed. That word appeared in the title of this reading, and I want to honor it because it is the honest word. This is not the comfortable, soft-edged experience of a quiet crush. This is the full-body, sleep-disrupting, concentration-destroying experience of someone in the grip of something larger than they were prepared for. Their mind goes to you in the middle of conversations with other people, goes to you during tasks that should require their full attention, goes to you in the silence before sleep, which is perhaps where it goes most insistently of all, in that undefended space between waking and dreaming, where all the things we spend the day managing stop being managed and simply exist at their actual size. And at their actual size, what this person feels about you is enormous. So I want to speak about what created this. Because intensity of this particular quality does not arise from nowhere, does not bloom in the absence of something real to root in. What this person is experiencing is not a projection, not a fantasy constructed in the absence of genuine knowledge of you. It is rooted in something actual, something they observed, something they felt in your presence, something in the specific way you exist, the way you speak, the way you think, the way you move through the world with whatever particular quality you carry that is entirely your own, that landed in them with an accuracy and a force that they were not braced for. You affected them more than you know, more perhaps than you intended, more than the ordinary calculus of your interaction would have suggested was possible, and that effect has been compounding. Time, rather than diluting it the way time is supposed to dilute things, has been intensifying it. Each day that passes without resolution, without the feeling finding its outlet, without the distance between what they carry and what they have said narrowing in any meaningful way, seems to add another layer to what was already considerable. A kind of accumulation, a building. The image that comes to me is of water behind glass, perfectly contained, perfectly visible, perfectly motionless from the outside, and building behind its transparency with a pressure that the glass was not designed to hold indefinitely. Something is going to give, not violently, not destructively, but with the particular inevitability of pressure that has exceeded the capacity of its container. What has been held is going to find expression. The only questions that remain open are when and in what form, and whether you will be ready to receive it when it arrives. Let me speak to you now not about them, but about you, because this reading would be incomplete if it existed only as a description of someone else's inner weather without addressing the landscape it is moving toward, because you are the landscape, and landscapes are not passive. They shape what moves across them as surely as weather shapes the land. The person who is thinking about you nonstop is not thinking about a static object. They are thinking about a presence, a dynamic, complex, living presence, and what they feel is a response to something real in you that called it forth. What is that thing? What is it in you that found its way past this person's defenses, past the careful architecture of their self-possession, past whatever distance they had maintained until the moment it collapsed? I feel it in your energy, and it is not one thing but a constellation of things, a particular quality of depth that exists in you beneath whatever surface you present to the world. A way of being genuine in contexts where most people perform, a capacity for feeling that is legible somehow, even when you are not explicitly expressing it, that comes through in the texture of how you engage, in the specific quality of attention you bring to people and moments, in the sense that being in your presence means being in the presence of someone who is actually there, actually engaged, actually real in a way that has become rare enough to be remarkable. That quality is what this person cannot put down. Not a feature of your appearance, not a single memorable thing you said, but the accumulation of who you are as a presence, the whole of it, the weight of it, the way it settled into them without their invitation and has been resident there ever since, reorganizing the furniture of their interior life around itself without asking permission. There is something else I want to say. something that lives adjacent to everything above but is worth naming separately. This person does not want anyone else. That is not a casual statement, and I do not make it casually. What I am reading in the current of their energy is not the diffuse, generalized longing of someone who wants connection and would accept it from various sources. It is specific, pointed, fixed on you with a singularity that leaves no meaningful room for alternatives. Other people exist in their life, presumably. Other possibilities present themselves, as possibilities do, in the ordinary flow of living, and those possibilities land as what they are, not wrong, not uninteresting, but simply not you. Simply not the thing, simply not the presence that has taken up residence in them and refuses to be evicted by anything the rational mind has tried to offer as a substitute. You are not replaceable to this person. Not currently. Not in the way they are currently configured, which is configured entirely around the fact of you and the specific and irreplaceable reality of what they feel when they allow themselves to feel it fully. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly, in the privacy of your own reading of this, without performing the answer for any imagined audience. How do you feel about this person? Not how do you think you should feel, not how does it make sense to feel given the history and the circumstances and all the logical scaffolding you have built around your understanding of them. How do you actually feel in the quiet, in the unguarded moments, in the spaces of the day where the management of your own interior life loosens slightly and what is actually there surfaces without your permission? Because the energy I am reading does not move in only one direction. There is a responsiveness in you to this person that goes beyond what you may have been acknowledging to yourself, a resonance, the kind that exists between things that are naturally attuned to each other, that does not require effort to establish because it was simply already there, a fact of the two of you in relation to each other that preceded any decision about what to do with it. I am not telling you what that resonance means or what it obligates you to. I am simply noting that it exists and that the story this reading is telling is not only the story of one person's feeling moving toward an unaware recipient. It may be the story of two people's feelings circling each other in the dark, each uncertain of the other's awareness, neither yet willing to be the one who turns on the light. Someone is going to turn on the light. The pressure on their side of this, the sheer accumulated weight of what they have been carrying without release, makes it likely that the movement, when it comes, originates with them. They may reach out, may say something, do something, make visible in some way the interior state that has been invisible until now. And when that happens, the question of how you respond becomes the most consequential question available to you in this particular chapter of your story. Not because the wrong response is catastrophic. Human relationships are more resilient than the fear of getting it wrong suggests, but because the right response, the one that comes from your actual truth, rather than your managed performance of appropriate reactions, is the one that has the possibility of becoming something real. Real is what this person wants, not a version of you calibrated for their comfort, not a performance of reciprocation designed to meet their expectation. The real thing, the full, unedited, complex, and luminous reality of who you are and what you actually feel. They have been carrying an enormous amount of feeling toward a person they believe in deeply. What they deserve to receive, if you choose to receive them at all, is honesty. The particular courage of honesty that says, here is where I actually stand, here is what is actually true for me, here is the real person you have been thinking about, and here is what that person genuinely carries. Something is moving in the invisible architecture between you and this person. Something that has been building quietly on their side with an intensity they can barely contain, and on your side perhaps with a quieter but no less genuine form of awareness. The distance between what is felt and what is spoken may be narrowing. The moment where the interior becomes exterior, where the private becomes shared, where the held becomes offered, may be approaching with a speed that surprises you both. Be ready for it. Not braced against it, ready for it, open to whatever truth it brings, in whatever form it arrives, from whatever direction it finally finds its way to you. Because someone who loves with this quality of focus and this depth of sincerity, someone for whom you are not a preference but a certainty, not a choice among options, but the only thing that feels like the right answer that someone deserves to be met with at least the dignity of your genuine presence. And you, whatever you carry, however you ultimately feel, whatever truth lives in you about this person and this connection, you deserve the chance to find out what becomes possible when two people finally stop circling and simply say the real thing. If something in this reached you tonight in a place that recognition lives, stay close, subscribe, and come back, because the story between you and this person is not finished. It may, in fact, be just beginning to tell its most important chapter.